Evening, ladies and gentlemen. We'll call this meeting to order. Diana, can you do a roll call, please?
I can, Your Worship. I can confirm that I, Acting Clerk Diana Wilson, am in attendance in the council office. For those participating by video conference, please answer present when your name is called. Mayor Mennel.
Present.
Deputy Mayor Jaguar.
Present.
Councillor Widner.
Present.
Councillor Moore.
Present.
Councillor Cerna.
Present.
Councillor Lewis. Councillor Lewis. Councillor Galinsky.
Present.
Chief Administrative Officer Adam Betteridge.
Present.
Director of Public Works Matt Sweetland.
Present.
Director of Finance Amrun Hadi Mohili.
Present.
Manager of IT Cecil Coxon.
Present.
And that's everyone.
Okay, thanks, Diana. And pecuniary interest and general nature thereof.
Yeah, I have one.
Go ahead, Mark.
Item E2, the Butters Drain.
So noted.
Thank you.
The minutes from July the 8th. Was there any errors or omissions? See none. Can I get a mover and seconder for those minutes, please?
I'll move
it.
Moved by Cerna, seconder
Second.
by Moore. All in favor?
Councillor Widner.
Yes.
Councillor Moore.
Yes.
Councillor Cerna.
Yes.
Councillor Lewis. Councillor Lewis. Councillor Galinsky.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Jaguar.
Yes.
Mayor Mennel.
Yes.
That's carried.
Thank you. Next, we have a public meeting. This is in regard to a minor variance by David Harder, Mary Harder, and Wade Jolly. Application number D13MV0621, Lot 35, Concession 4, known as 6791 Richmond Road, Geographic Township of Malahide. Mover and seconder, the Committee of Adjustment of the Township of Malahide be called to order at 7:32. And that Mayor Dave Mennel be appointed chairperson of the Committee of Adjustment. So mover and seconder for that, please.
I'll move it.
Moved by
Jaguar.
Widner, second by Jaguar. All in favor?
Councillor Widner.
Yes.
Councillor Moore.
Yes.
Councillor Cerna.
Yes.
Councillor Lewis. Councillor Lewis. Councillor Galinsky.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Jaguar.
Yes.
Mayor Mennel.
Yes,
That's carried.
thank you. Adam, could you give us an overview of the application, please?
Thank you, Your Worship. The application has been submitted in order to satisfy conditions imposed on a previously approved consent application with the County Land Division Committee. That's application number E2921, where the severance of a new residential parcel along Richmond Road in Carleton is proposed to be created. The minor variance will recognize two components as a result of the severance. Firstly, the former Carleton Community Center, which is, the structure has been there for many decades at the location where it sits today. The application will acknowledge the deficient rear yard setback of 2.36 meters, or approximately 7 3/4 feet from the rear property line. And as well, we'll look at the proposed minimum lot area, the deficient lot area of the newly created parcel of just under 1,700 square meters, whereas the requirement is 1,850 meters. Sitting as the council would have been made aware of these deficiencies when it considered the consent application. Those were noted as a condition, as I previously spoke about. So unless there's any further questions or comments from committee members, there's nothing further to add to the report. I do believe that it is appropriate, that the reductions sought are appropriate and can be addressed through. I have recommended one condition, that this minor variance be tied to the consent. So if the consent does fail to move through or lapses at the county, that this minor variance ceases to exist.
Okay, thank you, Adam. Is the applicant or Mr. Rowan present? I don't believe so. Seeing none, Diana, was there any additional comments received?
Your Worship, no further comments were received.
Okay, any questions from members of council? Seeing none, mover and seconder, report number DS 2137 entitled application number D13 MV 0621, David and Mary Harder and Wayne Jolly, and affecting lands described in South Part Lot 35, Concession 4, Township of Malahide, 6791 Richmond Road be received. Township of Malahide Committee of Adjustment approves the minor variance application of D13 MV 0621 in order to permit a relief from the minimum rear yard depth requirement of 7.5 meters, approximately 25 feet, for an existing single detached dwelling to be situated 2.36 meters, 7.75 feet from the rear lot line, as well as relief from the minimum lot area, 1,850 square meters, approximately 0.45 acres, to allow for the severed lot to have a minimum lot area of 1,673.9 square meters, approximately 0.41 acres. That approval will be subject to the following, that the associated county development consent application number E29 be finalized and completed. Otherwise, this minor variance shall become null and void. Mover and seconder for that, please.
I'll move it.
Moved by Sternos, seconded by Jagger. All in favor?
Counselor Widner,
Yes.
Counselor Moore,
Yes.
Counselor Cerna,
Yes.
Counselor Lewis, Counselor Lewis, Counselor Galinsky,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Jagger,
yes,
Mayor Mennel.
Yes.
That's carried.
Thank you. And we have another one, and this is by Stephen and Leah Ward, application number D13MV 0721, part lots 11 and 12, plan 87, municipally known as 51090 Broadway Street, geographic village of Springfield. Adam, can you give us an overview of this one, please?
Yeah, so the application seeks relief from the zoning bylaw, which prohibits accessory structures in the exterior side yard of a property. This property sits at the northeast corner of the intersection of Inverness Street and Broadway Avenue in Springfield. And as we can see on the applicant's sketch that I've put into the report on page 50 of the agenda, it's still somewhat in an appropriate location with regards to the property. Usually on a corner lot, we would see the front of the dwelling, in this case, facing Broadway Avenue, which would be the technical front yard of this property. But in this case, it's actually facing to the west on Inverness Street. So the location of the garages is in an appropriate location, notwithstanding it doesn't meet the requirement of the zoning bylaw. I do believe the neighbors to the east have provided their support for the application. They would be the neighbors who could arguably be impacted by this application. In my review, I believe that the garage it's not situated closer to the street. It is set back from Broadway Avenue, tucked close to the home where the cars park. So I believe that this is appropriate planning and that the Committee of Adjustment should approve the variance. I have recommended two standard conditions. One, that the building permit be issued within 2 years of the approval date, so that if it doesn't get built, the minor variance lapses, and that the structure be constructed as per the details as shown in the drawings provided with the application. So unless there's any other further questions from committee members, there's nothing further to add to my report.
Okay, thanks, Adam. Is the applicant Tabitha there? I don't believe so. Diana, any additional comments?
No, Your Worship, no further comments were received.
Any questions from council? Okay, mover and seconder. Report number DS 2138 entitled application number D13MV 0721, Stephen and Leah Ward, and affecting lands described as part lot 11 and 12, registered plan number 87, part 2, 11R8845 in the village of Springfield, 51090 Broadway Street be received. The Township of Malahide Committee of Adjustment approved minor variance application D13MV 0721, which seeks relief from the requirement of the Township of Malahide zoning bylaw, which prohibits accessory structures from being located in the front yard and closer to the road than the dwelling. The approval shall permit a new detached garage measuring 49 square meters, 24 by 22, in the area at a distance approximately 13.9 meters away, approximately 45.6 feet from the property line a lot line along Broadway Street. And the approval shall be subject to the following conditions. 1, the owner's application obtain the necessary building permit within 2 years from the date of a decision to the satisfaction of the chief building official, ensuring that the approved variance applies only to the proposed accessory structure as illustrated, and the application and the structure be constructed as per the details shown in the drawing, as provided with the application, site location, architectural detail to the satisfaction of the chief building official. Mover and seconder.
Move it.
Moved by Moore, seconder
I'll second it.
Glinski. All in favor?
Counselor Widner,
yes,
Counselor Moore,
Yes.
Counselor Cerna,
Yes.
Counselor Lewis, Counselor Lewis, Counselor Galinsky, Deputy Mayor Jager,
yes,
Mayor Mennel,
Yes.
carried.
Thank you. And we need a mover and seconder of the Committee of Adjustment of the Township of Malahide be adjourned and council reconvene at 7:40.
I'll move it.
Cerna,
second, it.
Widner, all in favor?
Counselor Widner,
yes,
Counselor Moore,
Yes.
Counselor Cerna,
Yes.
Counselor Lewis, Counselor Lewis, Counselor Galinsky, Deputy Mayor Jager,
yes.
Mayor Mennel,
Yes.
that's carried.
Thank you. Now we're moving into presentations. Gary is here. Gary, you're going to present the development charges update.
That's correct, Mr. Mayor. It's a pleasure to be before you. This is actually a public meeting for the development charge. We have undertaken the process in conjunction with staff interviews, and we have prepared a report which has been made available on the municipality's website. So tonight we'll be discussing the presentation of the findings. I'm not quite sure, does the clerk have the presentation or should I pull it up?
I don't have it. I don't know if Arun has it.
I believe the presentation is already included in the agenda package, but we can certainly share your screen if you wish to do so, Gary.
Okay, that might be helpful. Thank you.
Sure. Cecil will need your help with that, please.
The right's already been enabled, so you just have to go right ahead and share.
Okay. Just give me one moment to, there it is. Are you able to see the presentation?
Not yet.
no,
Now let's try that. Oh,
We do
here it
have the
is.
package in our agenda though, Gary.
Yeah, it is included in the package.
It may be appropriate for the public meeting to present it to the general public. Are you able to see it now? I apologize for this.
No.
No?
No.
No, I'll try it again. I'm hitting the share screen button. Oh, there we go. Now I've got it. Apologize for that.
Yes, there you go.
Okay. Apologize for the slight delay. So tonight's public meeting is held like many other public meetings to go through the background study and to provide an overview of the findings. When we close this evening's meeting, there'll be no adoption of the development charge bylaw, is to receive any input from the public. The public meeting is mandatory on the Development Charges Act and is part of the process. So as I've noted, we met with staff starting in earlier part of the year. We released the background study at the end of June. And there's always a minimum 60 days between when you release the report and the first day that council could consider adoption of the bylaw. So we're within those timelines. So everything is meeting the requirements of the Act. Development charges are what the province has provided to municipalities in order to collect funds from new residential growth, new non-residential growth, in order to finance infrastructure. So this infrastructure is there to wholly or partially accommodate growth within the municipality. These capital costs are in addition to what a developing landowner might put in within their subdivision. So they may put in a road, might put in some forms of drainage, streetlights, et cetera. Development charges pick up the broader costs that are normally outside of the development. The services that are eligible, there's been some adjustments to the Act over the last 2 years. The province has adjusted what we can collect for, and as you can see, there's about 20 services. The ones that are highlighted in the lighter color are the services considered in your bylaw. I've noted there's been changes since 2019. The province started with Bill 108. You may recall that was a piece of legislation which modified, I think, 15 or 16 different acts that were in place. With respect to development charges, they had introduced a number of changes, but actually by the time we got to the end, there was most of the changes weren't done under Bill 108. It was done under this Bill 197. And I'll briefly go through those changes. Bill 108, the key changes that were ultimately left in this piece of legislation was just to allow additional time to make the development charge payments. Normally, these payments are made at building permit, but they've said if your development is for rental housing or if it's for institutional development, you can pay over 5 years. So 6 installments, the first upon occupancy, and then on the anniversary, you'd pay each payment is 1/6. So you'd pay on the anniversary and then, on the occupancy, and then each year thereafter on the anniversary. If it's nonprofit housing, then it would be over 20 years and 21 installment payments. The Act does allow you to add interest cost. So obviously, if you need to go out because you have cash shortfalls because you haven't collected the money, you need to borrow, they've allowed you an opportunity to add interest to those payments. They've also allowed an extension on payments for site plan or zoning bylaw. If I came in today and asked for a site plan, the charges would be, whatever the charges are in effect today, they'd be frozen, and they'd be frozen until 2 years after the municipality approves the site plan. It's a similar with a zoning bylaw amendment. And so it's frozen until 2 years after, but you can once again add interest to it. If you don't commence the development within 2 years after getting the approval, then that frozen charge is gone, and it's whatever the charges are in place at the time you pull the building permit. So this one really was to assist certain types of developments with cash flow in essence. The key changes came under Bill 197. And what they did, as I've noted, they reduced the number of eligible services, and I presented that a couple of slides back. We used to have this mandatory 10% deduction for the softer services, parks, recreation, library, those type of services, but that's been removed now. So it's moving us closer to full cost recovery for those particular services. So really, those are the key changes that were made. There's some other definitional changes and et cetera, but those were the two ones which affect the charge. They've also allowed municipalities a brand new charge, which is called a community benefit charge. But that only applies if you have developments that are 5 stories or larger, and have at least a minimum 10 residential units in it. And that's a totally separate process. You need a separate study. So it really is not part of what we're doing in this particular study. Methodology is relatively straightforward. We identify the amount, type, and location of growth, identify needs, which translate into capital costs. When we have those costs there, we turn our minds to see if there's any specific deductions that are made. We end up with a net cost and basically divide it back by the growth to come out with the different types of charges. So simply put, what's the infrastructure that will wholly or partially accommodate growth in the future? You divide it by the growth to come up with the charge. On the residential side, we normally have low, medium, high density. So low, singles and semi-detached. Medium density would be your townhouses, and high density would be apartments. And non-residential is normally collected on a cost per square foot basis. So if you've got a 5,000 square foot building, the charge would be multiplied by 5,000 square feet, and that would be the charge that you would pay. There's a number of exemptions that some of them mandatory, not many, but basically they allow for some expansion. If you've got a single family home, you can add a couple additional apartments. If you got medium or high density, you can add an additional development. And they had made some changes so that if you're coming forward today and with a building permit to build a single family home, you can add an additional apartment either in the house or ancillary, like if you've got a detached garage, you can put it in there. So those are really the mandatory exemptions. As well, universities are exempt where it was to some extent not included before. Discretionary exemptions are what councils choose to do in order to target certain types of development within the municipality and give some form of relief, either by reducing the charge by a certain amount or eliminating the charge in total. And for the township, historically, you've exempted farm buildings, so that are basically predominantly for farm uses. And then also buildings and structures that are exempt from taxation. So places of worship, cemeteries, those type of things. So we've continued with those policies, and once again, those exemptions are included. Now, this simple chart just demonstrates that as growth proceeds within a municipality, over time, it activates the need for additional infrastructure. And as that growth occurs and we need to construct that infrastructure, there's not a lot of opportunities to fund that. You either collect what you can, wholly or partially through the development charge, so the growth component, or it's not mandatory that you collect a development charge, but it means then that the money goes over and it's being paid for by your existing taxpayers. So it's either those who are causing the increase in infrastructure pay for the infrastructure, or the existing residents subsidize the incoming residents. There's growth forecasts that we've considered, which is we've looked at some of the services over 10 years, some over 15 years, and we've looked at for Springfield considering a water charge, which we had calculated the last time around, and we've put it back in for council's consideration this time around. The services really are what we call services related to a highway. So let's call it just roads and public works. There's fire, parks and rec, libraries are, and as well, we've included growth studies. So the Development Charges Act, the Development Charge Study we do is recoverable. Some of the planning studies, like an official plan, can be included, and there may be master plans or whatever. So those are deemed the growth studies. As well, for, as I've noted, for the Springfield area, we've considered the possible water charge. Now, these are the charges that we calculated, and council were looking to phase in those charges over time. So we're currently in step 2 of 5 steps. And so the single and semi-detached charge about $6,200. And then as the size of the unit gets smaller, you can see the charges reduce as well. You'll note that there's no water charge in here right now. Council considered not including that in the bylaw last time around. So as I say, we've revisited it this time. These are the updated charges, and you can see for single and semi-detached for your roads, your fire, your parks and rec, your library, and your growth, they're running for a single detached unit just below $9,400. Once again, you can see the charges reduce as the size of the units get smaller. We've also looked at the water service charge, which would only be in that area that will ultimately receive the water, municipal water. And that charge is calculated at just under $6,300. So municipal wide, you would pay $9,386. You'd pay the additional $6,200, $6,300 within that area specific Springfield area. This just compares the calculations that we did last time around as compared to our current bylaw. So the middle column is the charges that we had calculated last time. Now, that was a couple of years ago, so we've adjusted it for indexing or for construction cost inflation. So you can see the charge that we calculated for those softer services were about $9,200. Council was phasing it in over time, so we were at currently $62.17, and the updated calculations are at $93.86. So from what we calculated before and what we've calculated now, it's only about $150 difference in those calculations. As we've noted, the water services were calculated but not imposed. And basically they're bang on the exact same charges as we had before. $6,279 is the updated calculation. A little bit of rounding in there. Non-residential charges, you can see we're $262. As implemented, they were calculated at $332, and there's marginal difference of about 8 cents. The water related charge is consistent at $3.38 per square foot. So these are the charges that we've calculated, and in comparison to what we had calculated before and what is currently within the bylaw. So if you pull a building permit today, these are the charges that you would be considering. And just presenting it graphically, you can see we've given you a fairly broad cross-section of municipalities. We've got London in there, Thames Centre, we've got Central Elgin, St. Thomas, etc. I'd note that the orange is the charge that was calculated at the county level. If I'm not mistaken, I think the county council voted on the charge, and I think it was turned down. So the actual charges then would actually be without that those orange, or at least within your county, those charges would not be in effect. The charges, so you can see this is at the left-hand side, or sorry, the right-hand side. The current charges are in the kind of turquoise color. The red is the equivalent charge. Now, both of those don't include the water, but if we include the water charge, then it would be on the left-hand side in the blue. Similar presentation for commercial charges. Some municipalities distinguish commercial versus industrial. So we've given you the commercial related charge. And then for the industrial, a similar type of charge. So this is what's in effect in and around the general area. That concludes my presentation. As I've noted, we after this, we will receive any input, but and we would be looking to be back before council on September 2nd to consider the proposed bylaw. And once again, we've presented all of this documentation is in a background study, which is on the website. And even the last appendix within that within that document includes the draft bylaw. So it's there for yourselves or the general public to review. So that concludes my presentation, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions you may have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Gary. Adam, have you anything to add to Gary's presentation?
I might just add one little just reminder about, so in 2019, council did the development charges, and there was an outstanding or an unknown factor with the community benefits charges. So there was a placeholder with however the province came about with the community benefits charges, we would work those back in. When it was determined that a township like Malahide really does not benefit from those community benefits charges, like what Gary spoke to earlier, we don't have those 5+ story buildings or those amount of affordable housing or the rental units. So we don't have the ability to leverage that community benefits charge. So that we're 2 years into a 5-year process. We determined instead of tweaking our development charges bylaw to account for that change, do a full recap of our development charges so we could restart a 5-year process. So that's really what we're doing, is because of the uncertainty of the community benefits charges mechanism when this was done in 2019 and why we're doing a redo in 2021.
Okay, thanks, Adam. To my knowledge, the town has not received any comments or questions from the public. I'd like to open the floor to any member, council members, to have any questions from either Adam or Gary, either one. Questions from council?
I have one, I guess.
Go ahead, Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess Gary, I have a question on page 21 when you got your temp center development charges. Am I right in reading that it's almost $60,000 for a single family home?
That's correct. That's with full urban water and wastewater charges.
So if I want to build a new house there, I got to cough up almost 60 grand, eh? Okay, I just want to clarify that.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Now, keep in mind, if you're in the rural areas, you still have to pay for your septic system. So even though you don't pay the municipality a development charge, you have to build your own septic. So there is a cost of building your own septic system to support your house. I live in the country, and 22 years ago, it cost me $28,000 to put in my septic system. So there's a cost with municipal services, and there's a cost with putting in the service yourself.
Okay, but saying that, if I paid the $58,000 in temp center, would I have to pay a sewage hookup fee too?
No.
No?
The development charge would be really your hookup fee.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from council? Seeing none, I'm declaring the public meeting is now closed. The council will urge the public to submit any comments in writing prior to August 31st, 2021. And council will considering the proposed development charges bylaw scheduled to occur at its regular meeting on Thursday, September 2nd, 2021. So I need a mover and second. The presentation from Gary Scanlon of Watson Associates relating to the development charges study be received.
Move it.
Moved by Moore, seconder,
I'll second it.
Cerna, all in favor.
Councillor Widner,
Yes.
Councillor Moore,
Yes.
Councillor Cerna,
Yes.
Councillor Lewis, Councillor Lewis, Councillor Galinsky, Deputy Mayor Jaguar,
Yes.
Mayor Mennel.
Yes,
That's carried.
thank you. Thank you, Gary. Good to see you again.
Thank you. Pleasure to see you as always. Take
Good
care.
night.
Thank you.
Next, we have a presentation from Tracy McQueen of Galloway Associates. This is in regard to our Parks and Recreation Master Plan. Tracy, are you there? There she is.
Is my voice good?
Your voice is good.
All right, just one moment. Ah. So I've just been asked to speak on the situation analysis report that's being tabled to tonight in part of your council agenda. And so I'm Tracy McQueen with MGA, and also on the line is Terry Allman. And we're both happy at the end to answer any further questions. So I'm just going to introduce the report and then we'll take questions at the end. But as you are aware, we were the successful bidders of the RFP for the very first Parks and Recreation Master Plan for the township. And so what is a master plan? So it really is the framework to strategically manage its parks and recreation facilities and services in a strategic way for the next 10 years. The situation analysis report represents only the first phase of the master plan. It will serve as the foundation of the master plan, as well as give us some benchmarking exercise. So in often words, Terry and I often say, in order to determine where you need to go, we need to understand where the township is now, and that is the purpose of the situation analysis report. As you saw in the report, it's very evidence-based. It contains a cross-section of qualitative and quantitative findings, such things as population characteristics, growth projections, trends and best practices, facility inventory and their utilization. It has a lot of financial information. And most important to us as well is that it had insight from over 50 council, staff, various leaders and stakeholders in the community. But as you note, that there is absolutely no recommendations in this report, but rather a series of findings that summarize our overall analysis. At the end of the report, there's like strategic themes that have evolved through the situational analysis, and these themes will shape the master plan as well as the recommendations. So what are our next steps? Well, tonight is part of the process. We're hoping to have your approval, and then we will post it, the situational analysis, on the website for public viewing. We have launched an online survey as well as a hard copy survey to receive input from residents and their activity interests as well as their satisfactions. The next step is the draft Parks and Recreation Master Plan will be finalized, and then it will be reviewed by staff, and the project team is Chris and Matt as well as Adam, and will be reviewed by staff prior to coming back to council. And we're hoping for in a month's time. At that time, we're seeking council direction to circulate the draft master plan and see if there's any gaps or noted any areas that need to be further developed, then presenting the final master plan report to yourselves as well as staff. Throughout this whole journey, the public engagement has been a thread of this project. And we are estimating that there's probably going to be like 150 people that have been involved in providing their insight into parks and recreation and their services. So just before Terry and I take some questions, if you have any, we just want to conclude that we are on time. We're right on schedule, and we're within the budget that was outlined for the RFP. And at this time, Terry and I are happy to answer any questions that one might have about this report.
Okay, thank you, Tracy, and welcome, Terry. Any questions for either Terry or Tracy? Dominique?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Tracy. I was wondering if you had a chance, as part of your data collection and findings, if you had a chance to connect with the county to perhaps piggyback on several surveys that they are conducting. And I'm pretty sure they're not published yet, but I'm wondering if they might be able to share some of the raw data. So I don't know if you're aware, but just recently closed a survey on for recreation and leisure preferences or wishes for older adults. There's one on active transportation. There's a study on demographics projection, and there's one on accessibility. So I think all of those have maybe just wrapped up recently. And like I said, they're not published officially, but perhaps, I don't know if you had a chance to be in touch with any member of staff at county.
I'll take that question, Terry. I don't know. Are you live? Okay. So thank you for that. We have reached out to the county and for part of the public consultation at the early phases, but we have to admit that we do not have those results. But with your suggestion and acknowledgement, we will investigate that further, and we can still include them because they're very important to the overall thread or what is happening in the township. So I'm very curious about the first one, about the recreation and leisure activities, especially also the second one you mentioned about older adults. The cycling one, we of course we're interested in from more of a safety perspective, but cycling hasn't been a forefront in the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, as sometimes cycling, as you can see, is generally offered more from the county perspective and as part of embedded in their tourism as well. So we haven't really looked at cycling further, but it all blends. It's very much recreation. So thank you.
Great.
Your worship, if you may. So member CAOs from across the county had a meeting earlier this week about the older adults study that's happening at the county with their consultant. And I advised them that Malahide was conducting this study. So I will be endeavoring to put you in touch. They are seeking data from member municipalities. I simply stated that we are doing a Parks and Rec master plan.
Okay, thanks, Adam. Any other questions for either Tracy or Terry?
Come on.
No, I think you've done a great presentation. Otherwise, there'd be all kinds of questions.
Well, I'll go ahead if I may, just one more, Mr. Mayor, if that's
Go
okay.
ahead.
I was just curious because obviously this is your area of expertise. So were there any surprises in either in opportunities or strengths when you compare to other municipalities, perhaps at something like we're not even aware of?
Definitely. I had some surprises. I'll name a few, and Terry, if you wanted to add on to them. One is just in the demographics. Like 9 out of 10 demographics will show that there's such an aging population. You have a fairly youthful township. And that was a bit of a aha moment for me. The other one I would mention is you have for the township such amazing facilities, and just for the opportunity to be utilized more, because I could probably say, once again, 9 out of 10 analysis is this would have a huge bullet about aging infrastructure. And the township is in great shape in terms of aging facilities. Terry, would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the Deputy Mayor. one, in addition to those comments made by Tracy, one of the things, and we know all municipalities tend to have partnerships or joint ventures and strategic alliances of that nature. But I was entirely impressed with the number and types of joint ventures or partnership agreements that you enjoy with the town of Aylmer, the Knights of Columbus, the YWCA, the library partnership. All of those are really quite something. And we've noted and will going to quantify actually the cost avoidance. So the amount of capital dollars and ongoing operating dollars that you are saving, if you will, on your residents from those strategic partnership is quite substantial. So that was one of my big aha findings.
That's good news, Terry. Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, I need a mover and second. The presentation from Tracy and Terry of Galloway Associates, GSP Group, Inc., relating to Park and Recreation Master Plan be received.
I'll move.
Jager, seconder.
I'll second it.
Cerna, all in favor?
Councillor Widner,
Yes.
Councillor Moore,
Yes.
Councillor Cerna,
Yes.
Councillor Lewis, Councillor Lewis, Councillor Galinsky,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Jager,
Yes.
Mayor Mennel.
Yes.
That's carried.
Good. Okay, Tracy and Terry, thank you for your presentation, and we'll look forward to the next step.
See you next month.
Take care.
Okay,
Bye.
take care.
Good night. All right, Adam, you're doing the next one on emergency services?
Yes, I am. There's nothing further that I can add to the report, but given that Dawn is not with us this evening, I could recommend that any questions that council may have, I can forward to Dawn for some responses.
Okay, questions for Adam on emergency services report? Seeing none. Mover and second report number F2110 entitled Emergency Service Activity Report for June be received.
Move it.
Moore and
Second it.
Galinsky, all in favor?
Councillor Widner,
Yes.
Councillor Moore,
Yes.
Councillor Cerna,
Yes.
Councillor Lewis, Councillor Lewis, Councillor Galinsky,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Jager,
Yes.
Mayor Mennel.
Yes,
That's carried.
thank you. And also mover and second report number F2111 entitled Emergency Services Activity Report for July be received.
I'll move it.
Moved by Cerna, seconder
Second it.
Widner, all in favor?
Councillor Widner,
Yes.
Councillor Moore,
Yes.
Councillor Cerna,
Yes.
Councillor Lewis, Councillor Lewis, Councillor Galinsky, Deputy Mayor Jager,
Yes.
Mayor Mennel.
Yes,
That's carried.
thank you. Matt, you're doing the no parking area in Springfield Road?
That is correct. Good evening, Your Worship and Council. I do have 3 reports for you this evening. This first report is brought to Council as more of a procedural challenge. It was on July 8th that Council directed staff to implement a no parking zone on Springfield Road from Highway 3 to 300 meters south. This was presumed to be allowable by Township Bylaw 0161 regulating no parking zones. However, upon consultation with Alvin County staff, with Springfield Road being a county road, this must first be passed by County Council. So accordingly, it's recommended that Township Council direct staff to advise Alvin County Council of the no parking zone recommendation. Then upon passing at County Council, the bylaw, Township Bylaw, may then be updated and the no parking zone implemented as previously directed by Council. And I can answer any questions that Council may have about this report.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Questions for Matt on this report? Seeing none, mover and second report number PW 2136 entitled Update, No Parking Area Springfield Road be received. Township staff is directed to advise Elgin County Council. The Township of Malahide Council recommends the implementation of a no parking zone on County Road 40, Springfield Road, from Talbot Line 300 meters south of this intersection.
I'll move it.
Moved by Serna, seconder. Don't be shy.
Move it. I'll second.
Here. All in favor?
Counselor Widner,
Yes.
Counselor Moore,
Yes.
Counselor Cerna,
Yes.
Counselor Lewis, Counselor Lewis, Counselor Galinsky,
No.
Deputy Mayor Jaguar,
Yes.
Mayor Mennel.
Yes,
That's carried.
thank you. And Mark, you're declaring a conflict on the next one?
Are we done with Matt yet, or?
Well, there's any other questions for Matt?
Yes.
The next one on the schedule is the drain, but we're coming back to Port Bruce after that.
That's fine. I'll wait for that. Thank you.
All right,
Mr. Mayor, I have a question for Matt.
go ahead, Matt.
What's progressing in the construction of Pressy Line, and have we any idea when that road will be open?
Through you, your worship, that capital project is progressing quite well on schedule with the schedule that the roads manager put together at the beginning of the spring. Much of the drainage facilities are proceeding. I believe there's 2 more culvert crossings that need to be completed, small culverts, and then the road will continue to progress. I don't have the end date projection quite yet. That relies on our subcontractor for the surface treatment portion, but I believe that will be closer to the end of September that we're looking to have the double surface treatment complete, and then that road be open back up. But I can follow back up with council with an updated schedule once we have those dates from our subcontractor.
That would be appreciated. Thank you.
Just no problem.
Thanks, Matt. Matt, the petition for Butters drain be approached that one?
Yes, through your worship, this next report relates to a drainage petition the township received by a landowner on Carlton Line, whose south property limit abuts Sparta Line west of Imperial Road. There's no legal drain outlet in the immediate vicinity, so this petition relates to a new drain to be considered with an approximate length of around 300 meters to the nearest potential outlet. So as required under the Drainage Act, when the petition is received, the council is to appoint an engineer to prepare the requisite engineer's report. And accordingly, staff recommend that Street Associates be appointed to investigate this petition.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Questions for Matt on this petition? None. Mover and second report number PW 2137 entitled Petition for Drainage Butters be received, and John Spreet, professional engineer of Spreet Associates, be appointed to prepare an engineer's report for this petition. Mover and seconder. Galinsky, seconder.
I'll second it.
Cerna, all in favor?
Counselor Moore,
Yes.
Counselor Cerna,
Yes.
Counselor Lewis, Counselor Lewis, Counselor Galinsky, Deputy Mayor Jaguar,
Yes.
Mayor Mennel.
Yes,
That's carried.
thank you. Can you call Mark's back in? There he is. All right, Matt, the crosswalk in Port Bruce.
Yes, so earlier this year, council directed staff to consider various crosswalk and traffic calming concerns in the vicinity of Port Bruce, and more specifically in the area around Wanacott Park. So staff have reviewed the area and had correspondence with local residents in support of various traffic calming requests, while we are awaiting more formal traffic counts, which would identify traffic volumes in speeding prone areas. So staff have considered the use of Collins Street surrounding Wanacott Park and bordering the pier, which does mimic other beachfront communities on Lake Erie, and do concur with a number of residents who have spoke out that the heavy pedestrian load around the park and pier would benefit from a more formal walking guidance to increase safety measures around traveling vehicles. So enclosed with the staff report, there are two maps. The first indicates two proposed painted crosswalk locations, one extending from the barrier-free parking area at the pier, and the second extending from Beach Drive to Wanacott Park. These areas were selected as the most appropriate crossing points to other pedestrian accessible areas to limit the need to walk along the road as best as possible, given the current physical arrangement of the paved roadway and the park accesses. So while reviewing this area, it can be noted that these crosswalks may provide a more designated location for safe crossing. However, there still is an absence of designated pedestrian areas, which result in pedestrians sharing the paved road with vehicles. So this comes with the obvious implication of pedestrians considering simply to cross the road at the nearest point rather than competing with traffic to access a painted crosswalk location. So further to this point, staff have considered further recommendations per the second map enclosed with the staff report, which suggests an optimal arrangement consistent with the manner in which the area is used by pedestrians and the vehicle traffic. So as very little traffic exits Collins Street on the east approach to the pier, but rather makes the full circle around the park, there is an opportunity presented to use the full existing asphalt width to modify the road to a one-way street and provide two painted pedestrian areas along the inside and outside of the curve. So this arrangement affords the natural slowing of traffic and less congestion and provides a designated walking area around the pier and the beach access points. So being that this area is already paved, the consideration of adding painted crosswalks is fairly low expense, around $1,500 for the painting and the signage installation, should council wish to proceed with the map 1 option. The conversion to one-way suggested by staff is suggested by staff for deferral to the budget committee, just due to the added painting, the pavement improvements that could be beneficial to walking areas, the signage expense. It also affords additional time for a community consultation prior to making a significant change in this pedestrian heavy area. So as council also directed staff to proceed with the pier parking area design works for construction to be considered in 2022. There is also opportunity to realize economies of scale to implement some of these measures at the time of that paving consideration also in 2022. So well, with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that council might have.
Thank you, Matt. Questions for Matt? Dominique?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just a comment to say again, I think this is very much appreciated. That's moving fairly quickly from, the initial request. So I think this is going to be welcome. I think already a few reactions to the one-way is positive, but I agree that it's always good to take the time to consult. And I like the notion of combining it with what we're going to do to whatever solution to the parking lot. I think that makes a lot of sense. But so yeah, I think that's great news. So thank you for looking after that.
Great.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none. Mover and seconder, report number PW 2141, entitled Port Bruce Traffic Calming and Crosswork Consideration be received. And that the township staff be directed to initiate the required line painting and signage required to construct 2 pedestrian crossing locations on Collins Street in accordance with the map 1 enclosed. The township staff be directed to include the required construction work to modify Collins Street from 2-way traffic to 1-way traffic, including pedestrian walking lanes in accordance with map 2 enclosed in future budget committee deliberations. Mover and seconder. Jaguar. Seconder.
Second.
Widner, all in favor?
Councillor Widner,
Yes.
Councillor Moore,
Yes.
Councillor Cerna,
Yes.
Councillor Lewis, Councillor Lewis, Councillor Galinsky, Deputy Mayor Jaguar,
Yes.
Mayor Mennel.
Yes,
That's carried.
thank you. Next, we have some severances.
Wanted to ask Matt a question if I could.
Go ahead, Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through to Matt. Matt, I want to thank you for arranging the police sign on Maple and Line, that flashing sign or whatever for speed limits. I think that's a good idea. I guess in the latest news about speeding, I guess anything 40, if you're 40 and over, now it's a racing charge. And maybe it's time to put some more signage out on in the Amish area. I had 4 Amish gentlemen here today and they say, yeah, it's definitely down. There's still the odd one that just flies through there. So more on the weekends, I'm told. So we could maybe have some more police presence out there, allowing some signage. Maybe we could take a few vehicles away and make it known we're not going to tolerate it. So thank you. And hopefully you can get that done.
Absolutely. We'll reach out to the OPP for some more additional enforcement and can review any suggested locations that more signage might be appropriate and report back.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on. Adam, there's 3 severances here. Are you dealing with the first one?
Yes, I am. I'll deal with all of them. Thank you, Your Worship. So the first severance proposes a new vacant lot on Springfield Road. If I can draw council's attention to page 120 of the agenda where the report photo shows the proposed severance. I am, from a professional planning perspective, recommending that Malahide Council not support this application. I believe it's rather premature. Specifically, there's some unknown information in the application, specifically what's going to be proposed on the retained vacant farm parcel, or residential parcel, how the dwelling is going to be situated. From a general good planning perspective, when you have a larger property with deep backyards, conventional planning does not recommend placing houses tucked in behind. It does occur from time to time based on other circumstances and factors. However, in this situation here, when we look at this area of Mount Salem, this is amongst the last remaining physical open accesses for a future road that could access lands to the west. Now, I do acknowledge that the lands are not designated for further residential growth in the township's official plan. But as communities develop and grow and time goes on, there could become a time when these rounding out of these settlement areas in behind our existing street front development could occur. And this is amongst the last physical points for an entrance. There are some other components that I've noted in my staff report, mainly that the septic system for the house to be severed has been determined to be in a failing state as determined by the septic installer. So I have raised concerns about that and as I've already mentioned, some unknowns about how the lands are proposed to be severed or further developed. So on page 120, what could very well happen with the vacant property is you could have potentially 2 new residential properties created from that parcel, each with a driveway coming from Springfield Road. We refer to those as flag-shaped parcels. That's where you have the very narrow driveway extending from the road to serve a house in behind. And as I mentioned earlier, that is not considered to be proper conventional planning, and there can be some concerns there. I do note that if council were to support this application, I've mentioned in my report that we have the typical standard conditions that would be required and to be imposed by the Land Division Committee, but I've also imposed 2 optional recommended conditions if council is to support this application, and that would be to subject the house to a holding provision, establishing that the dwelling be subject to site plan control, so it's properly situated in proximity and context to the other neighboring dwellings, specifically because it would be in their backyard where the new dwelling would be situated, and any other sort of buffering or placement that may need to be necessary, and even also maintaining that future access point if future development to the west is ever to occur. So I won't add anything further to my report. I believe I've summarized my concerns in the report sufficiently, but if there's any questions from council, I am here to answer them.
Thank you, Adam. Questions for Adam? Obviously, he's not supporting this application.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. if my memory serves me right, this same area came up for the same discussion several years ago. But I can't remember if it's the same owners or the same people. That's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Max. Any other questions for Adam?
Through you, your worship, I might just speak further to Max's comments there. There has been, and I don't know if there's a formal application, so Councilor Moore, I don't know, but I have stated in my report that this property has been noted. The area has a high water table, and it'll be problematic for a weeping bed in this area. It's not to say that it can't happen, but it is a concern, and it has been raised to, if not this current property owner, past property owners before.
Thank you, Adam. Any other questions for Adam? There is a report, report number DS 2135, entitled Application to Consent for Sever of Wilhelmina and Eva Dyke be received. Application for consent to sever E6021 of Wilhelmina and Eva Dyke of the behalf of Wilhelmina and Eva Dyke relating to the property located at Lot 20, Concession 3, Malahide, known as 650 Springfield Road, not be supported for the reasons set out in this report. And this report be forwarded to the Land Division Committee for review and consideration. Mover and seconder.
I'll move it.
Moved by Widner, seconded by Galinsky. All in favor?
Counselor Widner,
Yes.
Counselor Moore, Counselor Moore,
Your screen
Councilor-
froze.
Counselor Cerna,
Yes.
Counselor Lewis, Counselor Lewis, Counselor Galinsky, Deputy Mayor Jaguar,
Yes.
Mayor Mennel.
Yes.
That's carried.
Thank you. And the next severance by Lowen there. Adam?
Thank you, your worship. So there's, based on the configuration of what's proposed, there's a severance of a surplus farm dwelling, and then as well as a conveyance of lands to the west. All the lands involved are under the same general ownership. They're in various different names or business numbers, but the applicants own the land, all the lands involved, even the lands that are proposed to receive the lot addition. So in general, from a land use planning perspective, the only concern, and that I speak to generally in both reports, is with the concern of the existing automotive and or truck repair businesses. There's two locations, one on Woolleyville Line and the other to the north on Glen Collin, known as Endeavor Industries. On Woolleyville Line, that business is specifically zoned, and amongst the site-specific zoning there, I've put it in my report, but it's very specific on how many cars or vehicles can be parked outside and the extent of that operation. But as we can see from aerial imagery, and I have visited the site, there is a lot more vehicles scattered across the property and in within locations that's not permitted in the zoning bylaw. So one of my recommendations is, if this is to move forward, is that those zoning compliance matters become rectified as a condition of the severance. Similarly, if I can draw council's attention to the report photo on page 131, we can see down at the south, the purple area, that's where one of the operations is, and we can see it's a site-specific zone in A3-4. There's a second operation, also known as Endeavor Industries, at the north on Glen Collin Line. That property is not properly zoned. It's still within the standard agricultural 1 zone, and that does not permit the existing auto repair, auto body use. It's unknown whether it's truck repair or auto body or delivery. Regardless, it's not a permitted use in the agricultural zone. And my recommendation there is that as a condition, that use go through the necessary planning approvals to be permitted as per township planning requirements. One other note to consider, and we've included this as conditions as well, if this matters to proceed through, is at the township's easterly terminus of Woolleyville Line, beyond that operation, there's really only one landowner that requires access to Woolleyville Line, and that's the, you can't see my pointer, but it's just to the northeast there. Staff is recommending that what we do is obtain some road widening for Woolleyville line, as shown in the purple, as well as a turnaround circle for our snow plows and our emergency vehicles if they're ever required to visit the site. Woolleyville, the precise placement of the turnaround circle is not yet known. It could be further east to where we have it identified on this illustration, but such can certainly be ironed out through the conditions of approval if the Land Division Committee desires to move forward. That is all I have in my report. I have, as I mentioned earlier, this is indeed 2 separate applications based on 3 parcels being created and conveyed as a lot addition. So unless there's any questions or comments from council, there's nothing further to add to my report.
Thank you, Adam. Questions for Adam on either one of these applications?
Just have one if I could.
Go ahead, Mark.
Adam, on page 131, where you have the map that shows Woolleyville line and you got Glencoe line, is that map correct?
Your worship, I hope it's correct. Is that not Glencoe line?
Well, it says Woolleyville line and it runs north and south, and I don't believe Woolleyville line runs north and south.
Okay, so through you, yes, it does. It extends. If I can try to maybe share my screen, I will give you a brief illustration about the extent of Woolleyville line. Okay, can you see my screen?
Right. Yes.
Can you see my cursor?
Yes.
Okay, so Woolleyville line comes here and it continues easterly and then it cuts north to serve this property here. Okay. So anywhere between here and that property, the town is really only serving one property. That could become that property's laneway, or the township could continue. So we can deal with that separate from the planning or consent process. But what we would want to see is a proper turnaround circle for emergency vehicles and snowplows somewhere where we have Woolleyville line. It could be appropriate that the township declare at some point beyond this point here that Woolleyville line is surplus, and it could be added solely to this property as their own laneway because they're the only property that utilizes it or needs it.
Okay.
Any other questions for Adam? There's 2 applications. It's basically it's from the same individual, but we'll have to deal with each individual one just at a time. So mover and seconder report number DS 2139 on table application for consent to sever E5221 John Lowen and David Lowen be received. Application number E5221 related to the property located at 96 and 97 concession 7 North Talbot Road, part lot 24 concession Gore NTR described as part 2 11R 7037 known as 51432 Woolleyville line be supported for the reasons set in this report. This report and the recommendation of conditions before the Land Division for its consideration, and there are 9 conditions. So mover and seconder for the first one.
I'll move it.
Cerna, seconder. Jagger, all in favor?
Councillor Widner,
Yes.
Councillor Moore, Councillor Moore, Councillor Cerna,
Yes.
Councillor Lewis, Councillor Lewis, Councillor Galinsky,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Jagger,
Yes.
Mayor Mennel.
Yes.
That's carried.
So Diana, do we need to have a second resolution for the conditions?
Yes, yes, we
Okay.
do, sir.
Okay, mover and seconder Malahide Township has no objection to the land severance E52 in the name of John Lowen and David Lowen related to the property part lots 96, 97, concession 7, North Talbot Road, part lot 24, concession Gore, known as part 2, 11R 7037 geographic township Malahide, subject to the following conditions, and there's 9 conditions. Mover and seconder.
Move it.
Widner, seconder.
Second.
Gare, all in favor?
Counselor Widner,
Yes.
Counselor Moore, Counselor Moore, Counselor Cerna,
yes,
Counselor Lewis, Counselor Lewis, Counselor Galinsky, Deputy Mayor Jaguar,
Yes.
Mayor Mennel,
Yes,
that's carried.
thank you. In regard to the same severance, report number, mover and seconder, report number DS 2140, entitled Application for Consent, sever number E5121, John Lowen and David Lowen be received. Applicant number E5121, related to the property located at Lot 2324, concession Gore, NTR, known as 7037, known as 51499 Glen Colin, be supported to the reasons set out in this report. And this report before the Land Division Committee for a review and consideration. Mover and seconder.
I'll move it.
Gare, seconder,
I'll second it.
Cerna, all in favor?
Counselor Widner,
Yes.
Counselor Moore, Counselor Moore, Counselor Cerna,
Yes,
Counselor Lewis, Counselor Lewis, Counselor Galinsky, Deputy Mayor Jaguar,
Yes.
Mayor Mennel,
Yes,
that's carried.
thank you. And then on the same application, mover and seconder, Malahide Township has no objection to land severance number E5121, the name of John Lowen, David Lowen, relating to the property located at Lot 2324, concession Gore, NTR, known as 7037, geographic township Malahide, subject to the following conditions, and there are 8 conditions. So mover and seconder for that.
Move it.
Widner, seconder. Blinsky, all in favor?
Counselor Widner,
Yes.
Counselor Moore, Counselor Moore, Counselor Cerna,
yes,
Counselor Lewis, Counselor Lewis, Counselor Galinsky,
yes,
Deputy Mayor Jaguar,
Yes.
Mayor Mennel,
Yes,
that's carried.
thank you. All right, we're moving on to capital budget and report from Arun. Go
Yes,
ahead,
Your
Arun.
Worship. Good evening, members of council, mayor. Today I have an update on the operating and capital budget for the year. As you can see from the details provided on the capital projects and the operating expenditures, work is progressing rapidly and there are plenty of projects that staff is working on. So all operations are proceeding. The initial part of the year, there were closures to the facilities because of COVID, but those are now reopened or in the process of reopening. So we are expecting some of our facilities and community centers to bring in revenues, and that's part of the year-end estimates presented. Overall, on the operating side at this time, we are projecting a small surplus, about 15,500. This is potentially subject to change based on what happens through the rest of the year. And if some expenses are unexpectedly required to be incurred. For example, we have the 1,500 for the pedestrian crosswalk. That is something that is not in these projections at this time. So that's one small number that would be absorbed within that current budget. I'd like to, before I get into the operating budget a little bit, if the mayor or members have any questions regarding the capital projects, I'll be happy to take those. Or rather, they would be directed to the departmental heads. Okay, so with your permission, Mr. Mayor, I'll jump into the operating side of the report. On page 153, you see a very high-level summary of the different service areas of the municipality. And there are certain areas which are showing small deficits and others are showing surpluses. As a result, in the net situation as a whole operation, we are expected to still be on the positive side. There is no red in the bottom line, which is a good thing. Our main deficits are in the recreation and community service, in the protective services area, because there is a reduction in the fines collection that is affecting the revenue that would be passed on by the county to the lower tiers. So that is one area where there is significant revenue loss. So that's why we are projecting a deficit of about 14,500 there in the protective services area. And then in the other areas, for example, in fire and emergency services, we are expecting at this point to have a small surplus, partly because the volunteer points pay is directly related to the number of incidents and the time spent at incidents. So that affects the points pay that we pay out at the end of the year. So at this time, it appears that we will have slightly lower expenditures. So that's why there is a surplus projected in that fire and emergency services area. We also have COVID-related expenses, which are included in the emergency services area. And those are expected to be fully funded from the COVID Safe Restart funding that we have received. Council had approved approximately 115,000 worth of expenditures for different projects, and those are fully covered by the COVID funding. And we currently have about 80,000 still left over in those funds to help us with any other expenditures. I would then bring your attention to the chart on page 159, where it breaks down the service areas by the department. And you will see that, again, within each service area, certain departments seem to have a surplus and others are in a deficit position. So for example, in the governance and administration area, we have a small deficit because of some of the unbudgeted wages payouts that have occurred up until this point. So that changes the staffing budget. In the other revenues line, you will see there is a small surplus projected. This is partly because we are expecting a little higher interest income than budget, as well as some penalty and interest income on taxes as well. So that's why the other revenues line shows a slight increase or surplus in the position. I would gladly take the council through details for each and every department, but perhaps it might be expedient if I take questions instead from Mr. Mayor or members of council.
Okay, thank you, Arun. And it's probably the most difficult to update this in the last 6 months than it ever has been, because it's all speculation on what's going to happen in COVID and what we can expect in the next 6 months. But it's positive that we will probably be coming up with a small surplus.
Right.
So,
Sorry, one point I did want to bring to council's attention is that we had approved approximately 24,000 as grants to community organizations. And at this time, similar to last year, many of those organizations have been unable to hold the events that they had expected to. So we are not dispersing that full amount at this time. Currently, we have already disbursed 10,700 to Knights of Columbus, the community policing, the East Elgin Housing Initiative, and we expect we are reaching out to the other groups to find out if they do need the funds, if they have done some other initiatives in place of what they had planned, or if there are some things that are now going to occur further in the year now that restrictions have been lifted to some extent. So that is part of potentially where we will be disbursing the full amount that was approved by council during budget time.
Okay, thank you, Arun. Questions for Arun on any of this update? Dominique?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple questions. So thank you for a thorough report, very useful. And so just a comment or question about, so on the road operation, so obviously a projected surplus at this point, and I can imagine that some of it is saved for November, December. We could have significant weather events, but in your report, you also mentioned capacity, like staff capacity, which almost made me sound like, did we plan, more work than we could possibly complete in the time span? Is that what you were referring to, and some of the underspending is coming from?
I will defer that to the Director of Public Works.
Fair enough.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. That's in a roundabout way. That's correct. We do have a significant number of projects on the go this year, and especially so on the capital side in Pressy Line, it's a significant undertaking for the road department staff. And partnered with, we were also expecting to reconstruct Woolleyville Line this year as well with township forces. The crazy increase that construction materials have seen doesn't make it feasible to consider contracting out either of those projects in this year to an outside contractor, but rather continue on the current course of trying to do them in-house, which results in it's not a very long construction season in Southwestern Ontario, and Pressy Line did take precedence. So for that example, Woolleyville Line from a staff capacity standpoint isn't really feasible to proceed right now. That being said, that was the elected one project to take second seat because it's quite an expensive project, and it's a very narrow road allowance. So the design was initiated in years prior as part of a drainage petition. However, we want to be ironclad on how that's going to be constructed, considering the dollar value per meter of road that would be constructed there, to make sure that we're doing everything in the best manner possible for the township. So that's included in this report as being shown for deferral to 2022 as we proceed with those land considerations. Albeit that the project is still in progress from a planning perspective, but not so much from an actual constructability perspective. Also, we had a number of projects that mean the ongoing gravel maintenance and ditching projects that are operations activities that continue year over year. And we had a carry forward from last year for a few things that weren't completed. Again, because of our road staff undertook a significant project in-house with building the Pressy Line culverts rather than contracting that out on a significant savings. So there is a higher volume of work this year than there has been in prior years, but we are making good progress on completing everything, albeit the Woolleyville Line reconstruction is the one that does stand out. That's taking some extra consideration and does have an impact on road staff capacity.
Okay,
If I
thank you,
may
ma'am.
add one other point to that, is
Go ahead,
that the weather conditions affect staff capacity as well. If we get rained out, the scheduling that was planned for staff work is short. And so that kind of feeds into the capacity then available to complete the projects as well.
Mm-hmm. Dominique, you had another question?
Yes, if I may, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Back to Arundhati. The other big item is around the building fees. And so I realize that according to the building code, we can't put this surplus towards the general operations costs of the township. So it has to stay within the operations of the building services. But I also understand that we're already at, I think the reserve is already at 500,000. So we're looking at a reserve that will be upwards of, 750,000. So at one point, so I understand that this is meant to ensure that we can always operate this department even during years of, slow construction. Now, I think on average, this department costs about $200,000 to operate. So at what point do we consider, capping this reserve? And I'm aware of other municipalities who have developed a policy where they do cap the reserve and say, we don't need more than, 1.8% of our operating costs to be reserved, at which point then you can look at your fees and decide to decrease your building fees, because, and I believe that's why this reserve has been created, both to stabilize, but also to prevent charging too much in fees. So is that something we can look at perhaps during our budget deliberation? That because a $750,000 reserve is starting to be a little rich, perhaps.
That's a fair point, and it will certainly be something that will be considered and brought forward as part of future or next year's budget consideration for sure. I would also suggest that if need be, we can always internally borrow from this reserve to assist with any needs elsewhere, meaning that internally we are, for all practical purposes, borrowing, and then we replenish the reserve. So even though it is, distinctly set aside for that department, there is a certain level of flexibility subject to council direction and approval, of course, about being able to use those funds. Secondly, there are a lot of developments happening right now in the building planning area, and perhaps the CEO may wish to speak to that. But so there is certainly a need for using some of those funds. It may allow us to move forward quickly than would have been possible if we needed to actually, use our tax base to fund any of those initiatives. So from that perspective, it is not tying us up as completely as it would seem to be. But certainly this will be considered and brought forward as part of budget discussions for council consideration.
Right. Just as a follow-up comment, Ms. Mayor, I would be interested in seeing if we have any backlog at all in terms of inspection. If this money is there and available to make sure that our customer service and we're not, slowing anyone down. I would love to hear if there's an opportunity there, if there's any backlog at all.
Any other questions for Arun? Seeing none, mover and seconder, report number FIN 2110 entitled 2021 Mid-Year Operating and Capital Budget Status Report be received.
I'll move.
Cerna and Widner, all in favor?
Councillor Widner,
Yes.
Councillor Moore, Councillor Moore, Councillor Cerna,
Yes.
Councillor Lewis, Councillor Lewis, Councillor Galinsky,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Jaguar,
Yes.
Mayor Mannal,
Yes.
that's carried.
Thank you. Adam, you're dealing with the next one on the registrar appointments.
I'm sorry, Your Worship. So this forward for the division register, there's nothing further to add to my report, but I do note that, well, actually it's Diana's report. She's available to answer any questions.
Questions for either Adam or Diana? I didn't know you did all this work, be honest with you, Diana.
There's a few tasks that maybe you don't know about.
Yeah. At any rate, I'm glad you're doing them. Any questions for Diana? Mover and seconder, report number AC 2101 entitled Division Registrar Appointments to be received. Council approved bylaw number 21-59, being a bylaw to appoint Deputy Division Registrar to the Township of Malahide.
Move it.
Widner,
I'll second it.
Jaguar, all in favor?
Councillor Widner,
Yes.
Councillor Moore, Councillor Moore, Councillor Cerna,
Yes.
Councillor Lewis, Counselor Lewis, Counselor Galinsky,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Jaguar,
Yes,
Mayor Mennel.
Yes,
That's carried.
thank you. And Adam, you're doing the health and safety?
Yes, thank you. This is Gwen's report. There's nothing further that I have to add to this report.
Questions to Adam on Gwen's report? Dominique?
thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, just a quick request, I think similar to what I had discussed previously. If council could receive, I would assume would be a confidential report on incidents and particularly on formal complaints, so that we're fully informed. We don't need names. I think privacy of individuals can be protected, but I think it would be appropriate for council to be aware of complaints and how they were handled, and so that we can manage risk as is our responsibility. Thank you.
Any comments, Adam?
Yes, through your worship. I don't disagree. What I would recommend, though, is that I obtain some legal counsel and provide some legal advice to council with regards to what information and the details of such which could be shared.
Yeah, that's fair. We don't want to cross the line. Okay, mover and seconder report number HS 2101 entitled Health and Safety Policy, Occupational Health and Safety Act, and your update be received. Mayor and Chief Administrative Officer be authorized to sign the health and safety policy on behalf of the corporation. Mover and seconder.
I'll move it.
Galinsky, seconder.
I'll second it.
Sarna, all in favor?
Counselor Widner,
Yes.
Counselor Moore, Counselor Moore, Counselor Cerna,
Yes.
Counselor Lewis, Counselor Lewis, Counselor Galinsky,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Jaguar,
Yes,
Mayor Mennel.
Yes,
That's carried.
thank you. And the municipal network and broadband services, I assume that Cecil is going to be involved in this. Adam, are you leading it off?
I can certainly lead it off. I note that Cecil may be available to answer any questions that council may have because I don't have anything to add to this report.
Cecil, are you there?
Yes, I am, your worship.
One question I had, Cecil, obviously, these towers will enhance the service for all our municipal offices and some residents that were in that scope of the towers. How does this compare to satellite?
Satellite, even though it sounds like it's the be all and the end all solution, does have some inherent problems. Similar to wireless, you do need direct line of sight. And specifically, if you're referring to Starlink as an example, they actually suggest you have a very, very wide open view with a very large view of the horizon. So it's not just enough to have a small 10 or 15 degree sliver. They would want you to have a 100-degree field of view, 20 degrees off the horizon. So you're up north, like some of the people are that benefit from this. You do have a wide open sky, but even in some of our areas in Malahide where there's heavy tree growth, it's not feasible without getting some sort of height to it. The other downsides, and this is my personal opinion, and of course it's open to everybody's interpretation. It's not a local company. You have a huge outlay as an individual to take a chance on a beta technology, which still really hasn't shown that it is a perfect solution or even a pretty darn good solution. There are still latency issues. There are still, even just having a Zoom meeting, you can still have issues even though they tout these great speeds. You do have a technical issue. You're contacting somebody in the United States, and if there's a part required, you're looking for a week to a couple of weeks to get it replaced. There's been some incidences out west and in the States where when the temperatures were well above 40 degrees Celsius, these dishes failed. So it's not a perfect technology. It's good if you absolutely cannot get anything else. But I would argue that with a terrestrial-based system, especially if you're engaging a company who's actually got feet on the ground, who's local that you can call, you're probably going to get better service and they're more readily available to respond to any performance issues, do upgrades, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay. What's the radius from the towers that's going to improve service?
It will depend on the technology we use, what frequencies we use. If we 2.4 or 5 gigahertz microwave, it's all dependent on that and tree coverage. And that will be one of those things that would be flushed out in any potential RFP.
Okay. Any other questions from council on Cecil's suggestion?
Just have one if I could, thank you.
Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, through to Cecil. Cecil, what you're talking about there would also rain and snow affect the signal?
Through your worship, everything does. And again, it will depend on the technology you use. Any frequency that we use, the higher the frequency, the more susceptible it is to snow and rain issues, interference. And most of these deployments that you see in our local area, they're in a lower gigahertz frequency, and with the exception of extremely dense rain or extremely dense snow, most of the time it will stay up. The biggest challenge is making sure that you've got the strongest signal possible. So sometimes you will have to make sure that the antenna is optimally located high up on a roof, or if you happen to be in a treed lot, if you have the ability to, and I've seen them quite a few in our area, they're out by the road just to avoid the trees, just to get that optimal signal. So anytime you can keep the distances short and you can keep the absolute best line of sight, they should work just fine.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Cecil? Dominique?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I remain unconvinced on this proposal, so I want to back up a little bit and remind ourselves that the overall 450,000 envelope that we have sort of earmarked for this is completely untied. So it's unrestricted. Unless I'm wrong, at any point we could redirect this entire envelope to any other priorities. So I'm seeing this, first off, and we paid a consultant for advice. It may not have been the most polished report, but as far as the numbers were concerned, the pencil was fairly sharp. And the overall recommendation was saying that this is a large investment, even at 236,000, for very limited benefit. So it will only benefit a few residents and for likely a short term. So we're not really looking at even recovering and having a real return on this investment. So when I look at that and think, how can that be a priority? Is there not something else at the township that we're not doing right now that staff wish, if we had this envelope, that perhaps we would redirect? So I would really like to wait and hear what else our staff, like what other projects are coming that could benefit from this envelope of money, because this is not like a wow deal, we must do this. Like this is not a convincing case. I'm also thinking that Elgin County has not finished its full study. We're awaiting a report from another consultant who will make further recommendation as to the role of the municipality, whether it's the county or perhaps the township. So the county, the study is analyzing the specific need of each municipality within the county. And I'm expecting some recommendation as to what is the best way that we could invest. And I would love to have some additional insights from that study before we decide that building a few towers is in fact the best bang for a buck and the best way to address some of the issues. So I definitely would like to put the brakes on this, wait for Elgin County, and also ask staff to provide additional ideas, options of where this money could go, so we could compare return on investment and priorities.
Through your worship, I won't speak to the grant specifically. I would actually refer that to the finance director, as that's more her department than it is mine. But if I could go back to my report, you're right. And the consultant's report that we received from Community Fiber, it was cost prohibitive. So in the report that was presented before you, my suggestion was to create an RFP, go out to the market, and as a minimum dictate, these are the minimum needs of whatever solution a vendor were to provide that would meet the municipal requirements for our own internal communications. As you may or may not remember from last year when we initially presented this idea, we're getting into a situation where we are currently paying a nominal fee to the local incumbent ISP, Eastlink. We need, as we consume more data and we do more computerized services, we need more bandwidth. To go to the bandwidth that we could potentially require in the near future is triple the cost. So all these numbers, all this idea was based exclusively on if we need to upgrade the speeds, when we need to upgrade the speeds, we're going to be paying the Eastlink tax, for lack of a better description, to make sure we have those services. These towers were a way to wean us off of that, to be independent of Eastlink. And that was the initial idea behind it. The idea of building something larger or with more infrastructure and expanding it to include residential internet service was an idea to actually use some of that grant money to seed it, to feed it, to grow it. With the consultant's report, we have seen it's too cost prohibitive for us to do it on our own. I still see there's a place that in a potential RFP, an outside provider could come in and say, you know what, these locations are great, but my company is willing to contribute more money to build something else if we can provide service. So that's my hope from producing an RFP. Right now, I'm just kind of doing the low-hanging fruit, take care of ourselves, try to optimize our tax dollars that we do have, spend less, get more if I can. But by the same token, don't spend the full 450. I know there was an aversion to that in last year's discussions. So that's why this and sorry, I don't have the number in front of me, this $200,000 is sort of in the middle of the ground. But let's encourage the providers, and this is a recurring theme that we've heard at the broadband committee at the county. Let's encourage these providers. They just need a foothold. You need to get somewhere where they can have access. If the municipality can provide that, that might be the seed that starts growing more competition, more service. And as long as we're taken care of and we make sure we have our ducks in a row, the service becomes their purview. They're going to want to have to do well. We get to benefit by potential revenue, outside service, outside support. We might be able to lower that cost even more overall. My hope was, as opposed to the original inception of this, where it was a 10-year business plan with a 10-year payback, the grant money would give us immediate savings. So once that tower was constructed and once those antennas were installed, we immediately start saving money for the taxpayers. And those monies could be in terms of service usage, in terms of operational cost. Those monies could be reduced and or reallocated to other needs within the municipality.
Thank you, Cecil. Any other questions for Cecil?
Have one if I could.
Go ahead, Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through to Cecil. Cecil, as far as repair and maintenance and service goes, how will that work?
Well, again, that would be part of the RFP. From my experience with dealing with other companies, I've had associates who have built other communications equipment elsewhere. The fee is nominal. In most cases, similar to like doing a roof inspection. Somebody would annually climb the tower, check for loose parts, make sure everything's tightened down. In previous years at other locations, I've paid up to about $1,000. If we have a third-party wireless ISP operating on these towers, it's in their best interest to make sure that that tower is operational for their customers. So in the RFP, I would hope in a proper proposal, those costs would be absorbed by the provider because it's only in their best interest to do so. If their equipment fails and their customers are upset, they're the ones who are going to be getting hung out to dry, not us.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Cecil? Go ahead, Dominic.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Do you feel we have the technical expertise to write the RFP? And I say that, I mean, with all due respect, and in reference to the consultant report also, who said that, for example, in one of the grant applications, perhaps we have not fully appreciated all of the costs and all of the implications, which told me that perhaps, I mean, I don't know that if it's fully your area of expertise, like what we're talking about is like full infrastructure and ISPs. And so could we have some help even in writing the RFP? Because I'm hearing that we could go ahead with the RFP and still decide that this is a no-go. So this could be like the RFP could be one more exploratory step. I just want the RFP to also be solid and realistic.
Through your worship, if that's the direction that council feels is valid, by all means, I would think it would be a good idea to reach out. Out of the 3 respondents that we had on the previous RFP, one of them, I won't name them, that's exactly all they did. They designed towers, they designed the solution, they did everything that was required to basically hand you a blueprint and say, this is what you need to build. But they were the most expensive of the RFPs, and we didn't choose them because of that fact alone. I'm sure maybe now we could approach them again, see if they could maybe have a reduced, their plan was very, very, maybe almost too advanced for what we were looking for. Like theirs included doing testing the ground for stability, determining foundation sizes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Maybe that part wouldn't have to be included, but ultimately, if we're looking at just the communication requirements for the township's internal use, it's a very, very simple network. I would be engaging some professional regardless to install the equipment, to align the equipment, to make sure that it talked properly. But the operation, I do it currently. I have 3 point-to-point sites I operate within the Malahide Township, and I have a number of ones that I operate in a municipality, Dutton Dunwich, and a number in West Elgin. Our needs are simple. When it comes to the ISP service, the internet service, in the RFP that I'm requesting, that isn't going to be me doing that. That is going to be the third-party provider. And that's their problem to deal with, and that's their expertise to be able to solve.
Okay, thank you, Cecil. For my own opinion, I'm looking at, this is certainly not the overall and end all. Obviously, fiber is the end all, but that's got a $16 to $18 million price tag. We're looking at $236,000 for what Cecil's suggesting. Certainly would improve the township's connectivity as well as those residents that were within the tower range. So certainly I would support going out to an RFP and just see what we can get. Any other comments or questions? All right.
I think Arundhati has her hand up.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead, Arun.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to address a couple of points. One was the reference Madam Deputy Mayor had regarding the purpose of the grant funding. So I pulled up the original news release, and what the province had announced was that this would be the purpose would be to deliver modern, efficient services that show respect to the hard-earned dollars of the citizens. Examples could include service delivery reviews, development of shared service agreements, IT solutions, capital investments, and other projects. So yes, I would say that essentially the government of Ontario provided this money to local municipalities and gave them the ability to make the decision at their level. That was the intent of this money. But the intent was also to improve service delivery and find efficiencies in service delivery. So towards that intent, this project certainly speaks to that. And the presentation that you have for the base proposal or the base project it's essentially that this is the base that we can start with. And even at that starting point, we are forecasting a certain amount of cost savings for the township. We would be saving tax dollars by investing money that is not tax revenue sourced. And if we as the local municipality take the initiative to create this infrastructure base to encourage a independent ISP to then take it from there and create a revenue stream for us by leasing those towers from us. So therefore, we are not committed to the day-to-day upkeep or the servicing of that particular service. That is the thinking or the process behind which this request has come forward. Another factor I wanted to also bring forward to council's attention is that we have submitted our application for the ICON grant. We have progressed to stage 2. This afternoon, we received further emails from them indicating that they are interested in discussing our proposal further. So it appears that there is a level of interest and support that is coming forward. We do not know where we will progress, but they do require some more discussion and some more technical information, which we expect to be able to discuss with them. And potentially, we may be eligible to receive that grant, which may then, take away the commitment on this smart efficiency grant that we have received previously. And for stage 2, when we resubmitted information, we had adjusted some of our estimates. So we did pay attention to some of the items that needed a little more development. And so we resubmitted accordingly. And there is a lot more. And like you pointed out, we do not have all of that technical expertise to be able to deal with all of the aspects, but we certainly are at a good point, I would suggest. And I'm sorry, and perhaps the CEO would like to speak as well. But I believe that the one key point also up as part of the ICON grant is that we should be able to have some level of ability to indicate that we have a potential ISP partner that may then, develop this project further. So instead of committing ourselves to a RFP and a contract, we could potentially, as you suggested, Madam Deputy Mayor, that we may go forward with the RFP and then decide to step away from the project, or we could also do a different, another type of procurement process where we ask for expressions of interest from potential contractors and vendors. And based on that, then we develop the RFP, or we are able to move forward with an actual discussion and development of a contract, perhaps with a local provider, perhaps with some other ISP who is interested in coming to this region.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. Any other questions for staff? There is a recommendation put forward. Mover and seconder, report number CAO 2112 entitled Municipal Wide Area Network and Broadband Service be received, that Municipal Council authorize municipal staff to issue a request for a proposal for design and construction of communication towers at designated municipal locations detailed in the report. Mover and seconder.
I'll move it.
Moved by Winder, seconder,
I'll second it.
Cerna, all in favor?
Councillor Widner,
Yes.
Councillor Moore, Councillor Moore, Councillor Cerna,
Yes.
Councillor Lewis, Councillor Lewis, Councillor Galinsky,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Jaguar,
No.
Mayor Mennel.
Yes,
That's carried.
thank you. Okay, next we have committees and outside boards. There's minutes for the Long Point from June 2nd to 23rd. Any questions or comments? Motion receive and file.
Move it.
Winder, seconder.
I'll second.
Linsky, all in favor?
Counselor Widner,
Yes.
Counselor Moore, Counselor Moore, Counselor Cerna,
Yes.
Counselor Lewis, Counselor Lewis, Counselor Galinsky, Deputy Mayor Jager,
Yes.
Mayor Mennel,
Yes.
that's carried.
Thank you. Next, we have correspondence, and a number of them we have already endorsed. But on the first one, there's 21 items. Anyone wish to make comment or support? If not, can I have a mover and seconder, receive and file from the correspondence for 21 items, please?
I'll move it.
Moved by Cerna, seconder
I'll second it.
Linsky, all in favor?
Counselor Widner,
Yes.
Counselor Moore, Counselor Moore, Counselor Cerna,
Yes.
Counselor Lewis, Counselor Lewis, Counselor Galinsky, Deputy Mayor Jager,
Yes.
Mayor Mennel,
Yes,
that's carried.
thank you. And on the second agenda of correspondence, there's 7 items. Anyone wish to make comment or support? If not, I'll receive. Motion receive and file.
Move.
Jager, seconder,
Second.
Winder, all in favor?
Counselor Widner,
Yes.
Counselor Moore, Counselor Moore, Counselor Cerna,
Yes.
Counselor Lewis, Counselor Lewis, Counselor Galinsky,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Jager,
Yes.
Mayor Mennel,
Yes,
that's carried.
thank you. Any other business?
I have something if I could, Mr. Mayor.
Red mark.
Thank you. I want to bring forward a concern I've had lately for quite a few years over the corner of Rum and Yellow Line and Imperial Road. This intersection on the corner has seen several bad collisions over the years, with the latest a few weeks ago resulting in a fatality. Numerous changes have been made over the years, but it remains a problem. No matter what they do, there always seems, it could be driver error, it could be anything, I don't know, but the fact of the matter is there's too many serious collisions there and fatalities. With council's blessing, I'd like to have the county launch a study on this intersection. With the upcoming reconstruction on Imperial, maybe they can make some changes, in my opinion, maybe a roundabout, something like that, to try to resolve this dangerous intersection. And everyone I've talked to about this corner has had a problem with it. So I don't know what we can do, but I'd like to see it looked at and see if we can make some changes to make it safer. I imagine everyone on this council has probably driven through it and had problems, but I don't know. I'd like to see it.
I don't have any problem with that, Mark, that we could ask the county to look at that, because definitely that 73 North is going to, Imperial Road is going to be redone in the next few years, and it may be an opportune time to look at that and see what the options are.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Through you, your worship, I would just might add, I don't disagree with that action, but I would like to note that the county is undertaking a transportation master plan. And in our meeting, staff who have attended the consultations preliminary presentation, that intersection is identified in their study.
That's good. Hopefully they can do something with it. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments for new business? All right, we got bylaws. I need a mover and seconder. Bylaw number 21-56 being a bylaw to appoint a municipal clerk, be given a first, second, third reading, properly signed and sealed.
I'll move it.
Cerna, seconder.
Second it.
Widner, all in favor?
Counselor Widner,
Yes.
Counselor Moore, Counselor Moore, Counselor Cerna,
Yes.
Counselor Lewis, Counselor Lewis, Counselor Galinsky,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Jager,
Yes.
Mayor Mennel,
Yes,
that's carried.
thank you. And mover and seconder bylaw number 21-59, being a bylaw to appoint division registrar and deputy division registrar, be given a first, second, third reading, properly signed and sealed.
Move it.
Winder, Jagger, all in favor?
Counselor Widner,
Yes.
Counselor Moore, Counselor Moore, Counselor Cerna,
yes,
Counselor Lewis, Counselor Lewis, Counselor Galinsky, Deputy Mayor Jagger,
yes,
Mayor Mannell,
Yes,
that's carried.
thank you. And we're about to move into closed session, so we will have a few minutes break before we go into close, and then we will have our closed session confidentiality. During the closed session, the council provided direction to the municipal staff regarding a personnel matter of an identified individual, including municipal or local board employee and or labor relations or employee negotiations relating to Malahide Fire Services. I need a mover and second to bylaw number 2157 being confirmatory bylaw, be given a first, second, third reading, properly signed and sealed.
I'll move it.
Cerna and
Chester,
Second it.
Widner, all in favor?
Counselor Widner,
Yes.
Counselor Moore, Counselor Moore, Counselor Cerna,
yes,
Counselor Lewis, Counselor Lewis, Counselor Galinsky,
no,
Deputy Mayor Jagger,
yes.
Mayor Mannell,
Yes,
carried.
thank you. And finally, I'm moving second to the council adjourn its meeting at 10:02 to meet again on September 2nd at 7:30. Galinsky and Widner, all in favor?
Counselor Widner,
Yes.
Counselor Moore, Counselor Moore, Counselor Cerna,
yes.
Counselor Lewis, Counselor Lewis, Counselor Galinsky, Deputy Mayor Jagger,
Yes.
Mayor Mannell,
Yes,
that's carried.
thank you.